Hello everyone. Today our topic of discussion is the axis, okay, which is the C2 cervical vertebra. Now the interesting fact about the axis is that it is atypical in its upper part like the atlas, okay. So if you remember, the atlas is also an atypical vertebra, okay. So and it's typical in nature in its lower part, okay, like rest of the cervical vertebrae. Now it has this prominent bony elevation, okay, which is the odontoid process that acts as like a pivot, okay, that acts like a pivot on which the atlas can rotate along with the skull. All right. Now talking about this odontoid process, okay, in relation with the atlas, it forms the median atlantoaxial joint, okay. So if you see here, there is a flat impression, okay, flat longitudinal impression on the posterior aspect of the anterior arc of the atlas, on which the facet of this dens, okay, it adjoins and helps in the rotation. All right. So they form the median atlantoaxial joint, which is a pivot variety of joint. All right. So I hope you can see this oval facet. If I zoom it, you see this flat oval facet. Okay. Now there is a groove on the odontoid process. If you see it clearly, see this groove will settle the transverse ligament of axis. Okay, it will settle the transverse ligament of the axis. So if you remember, in the lecture of axis, in the lecture of atlas, I told you that there are these two tubercles on its lateral masses on either side. So here there is the attachment of the transverse ligament. Okay, so the transverse ligament helps in lodging this dens, okay, in proper position while the atlas rotates along with the skull. Okay, now this odontoid process represents the centrum of the atlas. Okay, so I hope you remember that the atlas does not have a body. Okay, so it's believed that the atlas has lost its body in the form of the centrum. Okay, so this is often regarded as the detached body of the atlas, okay, which is fused with the body of this axis. All right, now these are the two weight bearing superior articular facet which are massive. Okay, so the axis has this weight bearing superior articular facet. All right, so these are massive in nature. Now talking about the tip of the dens, see this duly prominent dens at its tip is attached to the anterior margin of foramen magnum, okay, by the apical ligaments. So see, this is the view of the foramen magnum. So see, this is the anterior margin. Okay, so the atlas settles over here, superior articular facet, okay, and the axis is here. So it looks somewhat like this. Okay, so what happens is the tip of the dens, okay, so let me focus the camera. So the tip of the dens is attached to the anterior margin of the foramen magnum by the apical ligament. All right, so I have shown you how the tip of the dens is attached to the anterior margin of foramen magnum by the apical ligament. Okay, so hence the tip of dens is also regarded as the apical ligament of dens. All right, so which is generally a remnant of notochord. Okay, now a pair of alar ligaments diverge from the dens. All right, so a pair of alar ligament will diverge from the dens to anchor with the lateral margin of foramen magnum, which will ultimately provide the stability. Okay, so this is the lateral margin of the foramen magnum. Okay, so it's connected with the diverging alar ligaments from the dens. All right, now there are two small transverse processes which overhang on either side of this massive superior articular facet. Okay, I hope you can see them. See, okay, now they contain this foramen transversoria. All right, on either side. Now the superior articular facet is more anteriorly located than the inferior articular facet. So this is one important fact, that they two don't lie in the same plane. Okay, the superior articular facets and the inferior articular facet does not lie in the same plane. They lie in different planes. All right, because the superior articular facet is more anteriorly located. Now see, the axis has this massive bifid spine which you see here. Okay, so its main attachment is the ligamentum nuchae. Okay, so it is the main attachment of the bifid spine, and it also has 5 other muscular attachments. Okay, namely the rectus capitis posterior major. Okay, so it forms the boundary of suboccipital triangle as well. The oblique capitis inferior, the semispinalis cervicis, multifidus and rotatus. Alright, so this you must remember. I am repeating once again. So the 5 other muscular attachments are rectus capitis posterior major, okay, the oblique capitis inferior, the semispinalis cervicis, the multifidus and the rotatus. Now the upper extent of the deep muscles of neck. Okay, so the upper extent of the deep muscles of neck are generally arrested by the spine of the atlas. Okay, so which makes it fit for dens to rotate. Now each transverse process, so they are smaller compared to other cervical vertebrae. Okay, and their tip is directed laterally and downward. Okay, so its tip is directed laterally and downward. Now rest of the attachment of the axis, okay, I mean the attachments on body, okay, the transverse process, the lamina, and are same with other typical cervical vertebrae. Okay, they're same like other typical cervical vertebrae. So this was all about the axis, which is the C2 vertebra. I hope you found the video interesting. So hope you understood well. Thanks for watching.